It's midnight and you're tuning into Nightline with me, Azaria. Tagaya. The headlines. Members of Parliament have until 4 p.m. on Wednesday to choose a new Prime Minister. And New Zealand announces it's locking down the entire country over one COVID case. Good morning. Members of Parliament have until 4 p.m. on Wednesday to submit their declaration letters stating their choice of candidate to be the next Prime Minister. This comes after Istana Negara accepted the resignation of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin as the Prime Minister on Monday. In a letter to MPs by the Dewan Rakyat Speaker, Dato' Azhar Azizan Harun, it was stated that the letters have to be certified as true. According to Dato' Azhar, the letters have to be submitted through fax, email or WhatsApp messaging application and addressed to the Private Secretary of the King, Dato' Nazim Muhammad Alim. He added that hand-delivered or late submissions would not be entertained, while reminding MPs to maintain secrecy over the contents of their letters. Dato' Azhar also warned that any declaration letter that does not follow the listed details would not be given consideration. The audience granted to leaders of political parties by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah ended at about 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Among those present were past Deputy President Datuk Seri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man, Pejuang President Datuk Seri Mukriz Mahathir, UMNO President Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi and DAP Secretary General Lim Guan Eng. Also summoned to an audience with the King, which began at 2 p.m, were party presidents Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim of PKR, Amanas Muhammad Sabu and Datuk Seri Muhammad Shafi'i Abdal of Warisan. All the presidents of Gabungan Parti Sarawak GPS component parties attended virtually. To cover this event, more than 50 national and international media personnel had camped outside Istana Negara's Gate 2 following the latest political developments in the country that led to the resignation of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin as Prime Minister. UMNO, meanwhile, is likely to leave it to the 42 Barisan Nasional BN MPs to decide on the coalition's prime ministerial candidate. An UMNO source was quoted as saying that the party's pick is its Vice President Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob. The coalition held its meeting late Tuesday after UMNO's Supreme Council met earlier at the party's headquarters at the Menara Dato' On in the federal capital. UMNO's meeting, which started at about 8 p.m, was held with both physical and virtual attendees. The meeting was chaired by UMNO President Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi and attended by party leaders. The meeting was described as crucial as UMNO has to collectively decide on a single name as the party's candidate for the premiership. The BN meeting was held after UMNO's meeting. Now we have political analyst Professor Dr. Siva Murugan Pandian joining us live from Pulau Pinang to speak with us now. Welcome to Nightline, Professor.
Hi, Azaria.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us on Nightline. Now, we are talking about all the members of Parliament which have been asked to submit their choice of candidate to the King. Now, they've been told that they can submit the name even via WhatsApp over calling for a vote in Parliament. Now, how does this impact the political leaders' audience with the King at 2 p.m?
Well, I think this is a different approach taken by the King. I think if you compare with what has happened back in March 2020, it was an en bloc support. But I think this time, all the MPs were asked to give based on individual submission, and I think this is to avoid any influence by the party's collective decision. I think this is a new approach taken by the King, and I think we should welcome this approach. And most likely, individual-based support will give more confidence to the King to decide who should be the next Prime Minister.
Very well, Professor. Now, we've seen that a government that is not elected by the Rakyat being short-lived. For example, we have Pakatan Harapan for 22 months and now Perikatan Nasional for about 17 months. Now, why do you think that it's getting harder for political coalitions which take control of Putrajaya to find it rather hard to complete a full 5-year term? And we're talking about only one full term.
Well, we have seen three governments for the past 3 years, and it reflects how the dynamics of Malaysian's politics have changed. And it happens when a government is formed with a razor-thin majority. That is why when someone is appointed as a prime minister, the very same moment, there'll be another leader who's ready to challenge the legitimacy of the government. And in Malaysian politics, it's all about numbers, and there's no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. That's why we are observing in Malaysian politics arena today.
All right, one more thing. It was actually learnt that during Tuesday's audience with political leaders, the King specifically said that there should not be any sore losers when a new Prime Minister is eventually appointed. Now, what does it take for political leaders to move into this type of new political landscape now that they have to keep all their differences aside to move towards this direction? What if we see this only happening in the next several months and perhaps later things may take a different direction where there could be sore losers after all? Can we expect political maturity here in Malaysia?
Well, it's difficult to define what is Malaysian political maturity, though. Although we would like to see political maturity, I think we have to move beyond political character assassination and seeking for revenge immediately after one takes over the power. We have observed this since 2018 until today, and that's also the same advice given by the King. It may be seen as a temporary approach to cease fire, but nothing is permanent in Malaysian politics, though.
Indeed. Now, Professor, Malaysia is in need of a strong and also a stable government. So are we looking at the likelihood of a huge coalition or a unity government? Based on the current situation and also developments, what is the more feasible arrangement, do you think?
Well, we have tested the politics based on grand coalition, which is also popularly known as constitutionalism, but I think unity government is an option if none of the prime minister candidate manage to secure a majority of the votes. A unity government will allow us to focus more on people-based agenda and stop playing politics, at least for time being. And I think it comprises various political parties, leaders, and what is more important is they will be able to focus on a common agenda, and the focus also should be on people's needs and demands until the mandate is returned to the people through general election.
Also, are we looking at the likelihood of a candidate becoming the interim Prime Minister and then is perhaps out of the picture after the next general election?
Well, I think we need a character who can represent all Malaysians, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, gender, and political belief. He or she must be able to unite all political front, responsible, clean, show sense of leadership, and I think above all manage the country to come out from our national crisis, especially through the pandemic COVID-19.
One more thing I must ask you, Professor. Now, several names have emerged as the candidate to helm Putrajaya. What do you think? A dark horse or perhaps the opposite, or from the previous Perikatan Nasional Government? What do you think about this?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, there's no permanent friends or enemies in Malaysian politics. Any character can come out as the top candidate, and it depends on whether they are able to convince the new realignment which could merge. But at the end, I think we should end the crisis based on someone who will be able to lead us and also end the crisis as fast as we could. It's difficult to say there whether it's a Perikatan Nasional candidate or from Pakatan Harapan's candidate. Everything depends how the operators are functioning. And I think by 4 o'clock tomorrow, we'll be able to see a candidate. My hope is someone who do not rely only on slim majority, but who's able to convince to get a bigger majority so that the crisis that we have faced for the past 18 months will end there.
Indeed, very well said, Professor. Professor Dr. Sivamurugan Pandian from University of Science Malaysia, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Moving on now, the Sultan of Kedah, Al-Aminul Karim Sultan Salihuddin Sultan Badlisha has decreed that a large number of vaccines be supplied by the federal government to enable the state to achieve herd immunity and restore the economic sector much earlier. Comptroller of the Kedah Royal Household, Datuk Paduka Bakardin, said that Sultan Salihuddin expressed concern over the high number of COVID-19 daily cases in the state, which remained at 4 figures since almost a month ago. He said Sultan Salihuddin had urged private hospitals, general practitioner clinics, as well as all corporate and private bodies to work together to provide appropriate support, assistance and contributions to increase vaccination rates. The state ruler also expressed his appreciation to all the frontliners and volunteers at hospitals and vaccination centres throughout Kedah who are working hard to carry out the tasks entrusted to them. The country registered 19,631 new COVID-19 cases nationwide on Tuesday, a reduction of 109 cases compared to Monday's total. In revealing the daily statistics, Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said Labuan was the only place which had 0 new infections. Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham said the highest number of cases were detected in Selangor with 5,753 cases. 293 fatalities were recorded on Tuesday, bringing the death toll so far to 13,077. In the intensive care units, there were 1,054 patients, with 525 of them requiring respiratory assistance. The Health Ministry also detected 39 new clusters, with 23 of them being workplace clusters. Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham also revealed that the Institute for Medical Research had detected 43 cases involving the Delta variant. This brings the total number of infections involving variants of concern in Malaysia to 690. To the break, 70% discount for JPJ summonses. Welcome back to Nightline. In a bid to reduce the financial burden of the people, the Road Transport Department RTD is offering a discount of up to 70% on all compoundable summonses from Wednesday to September 16th. The RTD said in a statement that summonses that could not be compounded were cases that are still under mention in the courts. It said the discount was being offered in conjunction with the 64th National Day celebration themed Malaysia Prihatin this year. The reduction is for all summonses issued under the Road Transport Act 1987 or Act 333, Commercial Vehicles Licensing Board Act 1987 or Act 334, as well as other rules and orders under it, including cases that are still blacklisted. The discount on the summonses is based on the current compound rates fixed in the RTD's My SICAP system. The offer was also extended to summonses that were still active and which were still valid, provided payment was made within the offer period. However, for blacklisted cases, the offenders are required to present themselves at the RTD office for documentation processes before payment can be made. Police netted drugs with a street value of 3.89 million ringgit following arrests of members of 2 drug syndicates. Selangor Police Chief Dato' Arjunaidi Muhammad said the first group was busted on August 6th, where 7 people were arrested in Batu Caves, Gombak and Selayang.
Lebih kurang jam 3 petang, pasukan daripada GSDM Keamanan telah menangkap 3 lelaki di kawasan perumahan di Batu Caves dan telah merampas buah kereta Beza, Roda 2 Beza dengan 97 bungkusan guanyuang yang berisi dadah dicaki methamfetamin. Kita juga turut menangkap 4 lelaki lagi di 4 lokasi yang berlainan di kawasan Gombak dan juga Ceras. Okay. So, tangkapan keseluruhan bagi kes yang pertama ni adalah seramai 7 orang. 7 orang keseluruhannya. Dan umur mereka antara 26 ke 48 tahun.
He said out of the 7 suspects arrested, 3 tested positive for drugs. In the second round of arrests, narcotics police arrested 10 suspects following raids in Ampang and Pulau Pinang. Around 7.35 kilograms of suspected methamphetamine was seized at a car park in Ampang. 7 of the suspects were found to have prior police records. However, both groups had no links to one another. All suspects have been remanded for 7 days. In Melaka, 4 individuals were charged at the Ayakuro Sessions Court for insulting the Yang di-Pertua Negeri of Melaka, Tun Muhammad Ali Rustam, over the latter's Twitter post last month. The 4 pleaded not guilty to the charge of spreading offensive content online. 34-year-old Muhammad Hermi Rahim, 28-year-old Muhammad Ali Aswad Aznadu, 36-year-old Muhammad Hafizuddin Rahmad and 49-year-old Ahmad Zaki Yamani Zainun were charged under the Communications and Multimedia Act. They were charged with committing the offence on Twitter between July 28th and 29th. According to the prosecution, the act was done with the intention to annoy, abuse, threaten or harass another person. In the tweet, the 4 shared a picture of the state governor visiting what was described as a village gymnasium in Kesang Tua, where Filipino 2020 Olympic gold medalist Hidilyn Diaz had trained. The judge imposed bail of 5,000 ringgit in one shorty for each of the accused and fixed September 22nd for mention. They were also ordered to report to the nearest police station once a month and to not harass the witnesses. After the break, Taliban announced Amnesty urged women to join government. On to the foreign news now. New Zealand moved into a snap 3-day lockdown Tuesday after identifying a single case of locally transmitted COVID-19 suspected to be the Delta variant. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said New Zealand, which had not recorded any infections in the community for 6 months, could not take any chances with the game-changer Delta strain.
Delta has been called a game changer, and it is. It means we need to again go hard and early to stop the spread. We have seen what can happen elsewhere if we fail to get on top of it. We only get one chance. That's why
Ardern also cited Australia's struggles to contain the highly transmissible Delta variant for her short, sharp reaction to the case, which was found in a 58-year-old Auckland man. The initial plan is for New Zealand to remain in lockdown for 3 days from Tuesday night, with Auckland and the nearby Coromandel area facing restrictions for a week. Officials said a major factor behind the strong response is the fact that the Auckland case has no obvious connection to the border or managed isolation. Heavy rains lashed Haiti on Tuesday night, complicating rescue efforts and drenching thousands left homeless by a devastating earthquake that killed at least 1,419 people as hopes dimmed for survivors. According to the U.S. National Hurricane Center, Tropical Depression Grace churned over the regions of southwest Haiti was hit by Saturday's quake of a magnitude 7.2, whipping devastated towns with high winds and torrential rains, causing flooding in at least one area. The storm is also expected to dump up to 38 centimeters of water on parts of Haiti, creating a risk of flash floods, and is now projected to gain near hurricane strength before making landfall in Mexico by the end of the week. As hopes began to dim of finding significant numbers of survivors, the storm impeded rescuers in the seaside city of Leke, about 150 kilometers west of the capital Port-au-Prince, which bore the brunt of the quake, with about 37,312 houses destroyed by the quake and many of those still unexcavated. The death toll is expected to rise. The Taliban has announced a general amnesty for government workers across Afghanistan and urged women to join its government on Tuesday, seeking to convince a wary population that they have changed a day after deadly chaos gripped the main airport as desperate crowds tried to flee the country. The promises of amnesty from Inamullah Semangani, a member of the Taliban's Cultural Commission, were the first comments on how the Taliban might govern on a national level. His remarks remained vague, however, as the Taliban are still negotiating with political leaders of the country's fallen government and no formal handover deal has been announced. So far, while there were no major reports of abuses or fighting in the capital of Kabul, as the Taliban now patrols its streets, many residents have stayed home and remain fearful after the insurgents' takeover saw prisons emptied and armories looted. Following a blitz across Afghanistan that saw many cities fall to the insurgents without a fight, the Taliban have sought to portray themselves as more moderate than when they imposed a brutal rule in the late 1990s, but many Afghans remain skeptical. Penang stunned to defeat by Kedah. Sports coming up next. Sports now. A 3-goal burst in 22 first-half minutes by Kedah Darul Aman FC all but sealed a 4-1 win over Penang FC in their Super League match at the Darul Aman Stadium on Tuesday. Kedah produced a spirited display this time with Ivorian Chiche Kipre notching a brace and an assist. Kipre opened accounts after just 16 minutes with a powerful drive from outside the box before skipper Badrul Bakhtiar added the second 6 minutes later with another screamer off a cross from the Ivorian. Kipre, a constant menace in Penang FC's defence, then made it 3-0 in the 38th minute. Undaunted, Penang FC managed to reduce the deficit in the 43rd minute. KDA FC, however, were not done yet as they continued to dominate the second half and added one more goal through Kepa Sherman in the 54th minute to seal all 3 points. With the win, Kedah are now 4th in the Super League standings with 29 points from 15 matches, while Penang are 3rd with 31 points from 18 matches. Now, as we wrap up Nightline this time around, let's take a look at this interactive digital installation featuring millions of colourful particles dancing around to three-dimensional space and greeting visitors to new artistic hotspots in Dubai. The region's largest and most advanced digital arts gallery of Infinity Give Lumiere exhibits artworks including Van Gogh's Starry Night, Thomas Vanz's Sea and Dream Japan by Danny Rose Studio. With that, I'm Azaria Tagaya. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.